let's talk about again why this is so important. Really been talking a lot about like how there there's no number on how many coaches there are. I like to say around a 500,000 people are calling themselves coaches right now. You'll see numbers around like the 130,000 mark, but those are people who have just like registered. So those are people that are like showing up and they are either accredited or they're like registered in some way as a coach in one specific entity, not like as a whole. Because as you know, this is an unregulated um body of or it's an unregulated practice. There's no licensing board, there's no barrier to entry. You can wake up tomorrow and you can build a website over the weekend, especially now in the age of AI, and you can start taking payments on Monday and not even remotely be qualified. And that's exactly why the market got so crowded, and it got so crowded very fast. So most coaches are competing on the exact same surface level things, like the same promises, the same language, right? Of like, I help, women step into their power. I'm an empowerment coach. I do this, I do that. I'm a business coach. So if you're wondering and if you feel it, why it feels harder for you right now to stand out, it's because the room is really noisy. So it's hard to stand out because everyone's saying the same thing, especially with AI, right? AI is really making people say the exact same things. So it's really important for you to remember. 87% of um 87% of organizations have reported that they actually get a positive ROI from coaching, which is really positive, right? You guys know I always talk about kind of like the negative things that are happening, but clients know that coaching works. That's why they keep showing up. They're not skeptical of coaching as a whole, right? As an industry, they're skeptical of coaches, right? Because they know that the barrier of entry is so low. And a lot of people have gotten burned. I've talked to just, a handful of people, even just this week, and it's only Wednesday, that have gotten very burned from coaches, have spent a lot of money from promises that were made and then very much under delivered. I also know incredible coaches, right? Who say what they're going to do and then they show up and they do that thing, right? So that market is people love coaching and they know what it can provide. You just have to be able to provide it, right? So that's another thing too that I want you um, to recognize, that you have to earn that trust, right? And the people that earn the trust aren't necessarily the loudest ones. They're the ones that show up differently in the work. So just know that as well. Trust is going to be the thing that makes you stand out. It's not your niche. It's not the aesthetic. It's whether a client believes that you are actually going to be able to do the thing that you're saying that you're going to do. That's what will make you stand out. And that's what's going to get people coming on repeat, right? When it comes to the coaching certification market, which you guys know I'm in, and not coaching itself, the certifications. So I'm telling you guys these stats of what's happening in the industry because it's going to flow right into what we're talking about today. That market is set to go from $11.7 billion to $13 billion this year alone. And that means more coaches are getting certified. That also means that more credentials are flooding the market, which means that your credential that you have, if you do have one, is no longer the thing that makes you stand out, because that's going to be the baseline. Right. Before it was like, oh, are you a certified coach? Great. You must know what you're talking about. Now people realize that, hey, certifications don't actually give you the skill. They don't give you accreditation. They don't give you something that's deeper. Right. And so credentials will now be the baseline. Now trust and skill is going to be the thing that makes you stand out. Right. So this is going to be something we're really going to focus on today. So I've been having this conversation a lot. And anytime I'm training coaches, this is something that comes up over and over and over again. So it doesn't matter what the coach is doing. It doesn't matter how long they've been coaching, and they could be in different niches. They can be in different, situations, experience levels. Some of them have been coaching for years, and some of these people are newer. And it doesn't matter. I'm having the same conversations with them. Like it's the version of them that thinks that they're just not confident yet. And so you can drop this in the chat. Where do you feel like you're at with your confidence level? So you can feel like you're the absolute most confident and competent coach out there, but maybe there's one area that you don't feel 100% strong in, right? That you don't feel like you can lead it as well as you know that you can because you know that you're capable, right? Or maybe you're just starting, or maybe you don't have the certifications yet. And so you're really not feeling that high level of confidence. So drop that in the chat for me. I'm going to get that pulled back up so I can actually see that. Perfect. Okay. Because that's going to be really important for you to recognize within yourself, because there's going to be things that you're more confident in and more competent in that you're not. So what I'm hearing a lot of is that right there, that I'm just not confident yet. I need to work on my confidence. I need to work on, showing up stronger. I need to get more strategy, those type of things. And there was a time in my career, and maybe you too, that I would just take that for face value. And it's like, of course you do. Of course you need to get more confidence. But I don't see it like that anymore, because this is what I figured out about being in this industry for so long and watching coaches try to really solve this. And they really look at it as if it's a confidence problem. But confidence is just a story that we tell ourselves, right? That's just a story we tell ourselves about the problem. It's the most convenient story. It's the one that's easiest to grab onto. And it sounds the most reasonable. It sounds coachable, right? It sounds like, oh, there's something I can do about this, but it's completely wrong. Where it's going to be like really, really frank with it. It's wrong. Like, it is not the thing. So we're going to go deeper into what it is. It's deeper than confidence because it's about your identity, right? Specifically that gap between who you want to be as a coach or a person, right? How you want to show up, and then what you actually believe about who you are. That's the gap that we're talking about. And that gap right there is what runs everything. It's what shows up in your coaching calls. It's what shows up in your just conversations that you have with anyone that you're conversing with, right? So stick around, because at the end of our call today, I'm going to actually tell you one question that you can ask yourself that's really going to change so much for you. So we're talking about what most people think is confidence, but we're highlighting it in the level of identity. So I had a conversation recently with a coach, and she'd been coaching for years, like for a long time. She's very well trained, and she's really good at what she does. Like, she really is. She's really great at what she does. And she has this ability to set with clients in a way that most coaches don't. She asks really great questions. She can hold hard conversations. And she had been in a bit of a different industry before coming into the coaching industry. And there was just something off about it. And the way that she would ask questions, I was listening to a call, is the way she would ask questions, she just kept like holding back. She'd get right to that point, that right to the edge of like that real question, like what like it's right there. You feel that entry point as a coach. You know what I'm talking about. You know that entry point that you feel, and you're like, this is it. The one that actually cracks it open, the one that really like dissolves that story. And so this coach, what she would do, instead of going in for that question, she would soften it. She would rephrase it. She would make it safer. And so I asked her, like, what's going on with that? Like, why are you doing that? And there was, I mean, you can tell me if you relate to some of these things, because there's probably a lot of these responses that she said that you actually relate to as a coach. And it's something along the lines of like, I didn't want to push too hard. It didn't feel like the right time. That wasn't the right moment. It didn't feel like I built enough trust or rapport with this client yet. You know that list, right? You have your own version of it, guaranteed. And if you don't, you're not being honest with yourself. And we come here to be honest, right? Forgot to ask you guys that at the beginning. Are you here and ready to be honest with yourself, right? Yes. Drop a yes in the chat. So when you're thinking about this, like your own versions, and these answers, right, that you're coming up with, and these answers that she was coming up with, they're not always wrong. Timing really does matter. Reading the room really does matter. But this was not about timing, right? This was about something completely different. So what I asked her was, what do you actually believe about your ability to handle what comes up when you ask that hard question? What do you believe about your ability to handle that? What do you believe about your capability to navigate these sessions in a way that are really powerful. When your client comes with their trauma, with their drama, and they always do, what do you believe about yourself? So I want you to ask that for yourself too today. And so this person that I was talking to was very quiet, thinking about this. And then what she said was, I don't have enough confidence, right? And I said, it's not that you don't have enough confidence. And then it was, I don't know if I'm the coach who gets to go there. I don't know if I'm the coach who can hold that space. I don't know if I'm qualified to do that. So I don't know if I'm the coach who gets to go there. Do you guys see what's happening? That's not technique. That's not a technique problem. It's not a timing problem. That's an identity problem. Right? She knew the question to ask. She had the perceived skill, right? But what she had was a lack of belief in herself and a belief that she was a person who was allowed to use it, who was allowed to facilitate it. So these are two completely different things, and they require two completely different solutions. Because when you're trying to fix an identity problem with more technique training, it's like trying to fix a foundation crack with just slapping paint on top of it. Your foundation's still not right? That crack's going to come back. It's going to crack. You're going to see it probably pretty quick, right? So we can't do that anymore. And from my personal experience and my belief, almost all of us as coaches need more skill, right? Always. We should always be leveling up our skill, our craft, be working on it. And then I also truly believe that every single coach has more work to do in their identity of who they can become, because the more you stretch, the more you're moving into a new identity, right? So that's what I want you guys to recognize today. There's a huge difference between confidence and your identity, because confidence is a feeling, right? Confidence is like a state. Confidence can show up whenever you really try to cultivate it. It can also disappear at the worst possible moments. Who here relates to that, right? Where you've really pumped yourself up, you're feeling really ready, you're getting into maybe a sales call, you're getting into a coaching call with a client who maybe you're a little uncomfortable with, and then they challenge you in a way. They ask your rate and you are like, you're not super certain in your ability to like actually charge those prices yet. Maybe there's this big opportunity that you want to say yes to. You can manufacture the confidence for that moment. You can hype yourself up. You can slap that sticky note on your mirror. You can listen to a playlist. You can get into a different state, but that only works temporarily. It really does. And not to burst any bubbles here, that is not a lasting state. There are plenty of events out there that will get you into state. And then when you leave that, you're back to where you were, right? Because confidence is a feeling and identity is the structure. Identity is not a structure, right? It's a framework. It's exactly how it's everything. It's your operating system. So in your identity, that's what runs everything you do. All of your thoughts, all of your beliefs, all of your actions, all of your behaviors come from the identity that you build about yourself, right? That determines what you default to, what you do when you're tired, when someone pushes back on you, when, you're showing up and you're wanting to be perceived a certain way and you're not being perceived that way, your identity will come to the surface. So you can think about it like this. Confidence says, I can do this. Identity says, I am someone who does this, right? There's no convincing in your identity. You just are. Those aren't the same thing, but we focus on the confidence instead of understanding the identity of who we need to become, right? So that gap between confidence and identity, that's what keeps most coaches stuck, because they're never living in this state, this identity of the version of them who shows up, right? Because again, you can hype yourself up before a session, but you cannot hype yourself up into asking certain questions in a call that might make the client uncomfortable if somewhere underneath you don't believe you're the coach who can go there to do that, to create that change, to facilitate that. Do you understand the difference, guys? It's really important that you do. Right? Because if you don't believe you're that person, you're not going to ask the question. You're going to soften it. You can tell yourself to be more direct, but you can't override that pull to soften it. Maybe you're a little bit more direct, but then the softening happens somewhere else. It's always going to come through. You're always going to try to cushion it in a way that makes you more comfortable, in a way that matches up to your identity. It's one of the most important things that you can actually really understand for yourself. Because if you're not truly understanding this, you're not making any changes, right? So when your identity as a coach, if you haven't really settled into the belief that that you can facilitate that change, again, you're going to keep defaulting back to a version of you that can't. So identity runs everything underneath. Hopefully everyone's catching on to this. Hopefully you're really feeling this. And this is where it becomes really tricky though, right? Because I would love to just know in the chat, how are you feeling with this? Like, do you feel like there's another level, this next level identity for yourself? Because the thing is like identity itself doesn't like announce itself. It doesn't say, hey, I'm your identity problem. I'm going to sabotage this call. Good luck. It doesn't do that. It shows up in various ways. Like I said, you may be like, I'm going to be more direct. But in another part of the conversation, you softened it, or you over-validated, or you did something else because you were trying to soften, right? So your identity is always going to show up in your patterns. It's going to show up in your habits. It's going to show up in the things that you keep doing, even when you know better, right? This is why awareness doesn't actually change behavior. And that's why I'll die on that hill, because just because you're aware of your actions and your behaviors doesn't mean you'll actually change it. Right. And so this is what you're going to have to do. So I want to walk through a little bit more of like how this might be showing up in your actual coaching, because I also get a lot of pushback on this from clients or from coaches, because we've been taught so long that if we just kind of convince ourselves to do or be something, then we will become that. And there's a level of truth to that. But if you're not noticing how you're showing up in your calls with these different, I'm going to show you some different places that it shows up. If you're not noticing that for yourself, you're missing the mark, right? You're missing the opportunity. If you're not willing to be honest with yourself, then you're not willing to grow. And it really is as simple as that. So I see this a lot, and this is where I get a lot of pushback, because people think that they're really challenging their clients. Like they really think they're pushing. They really think they're asking these questions that are like really difficult, but there's a level of safety within them, right? So I want to show you 4 different places that this identity is showing up in your coaching, right? And the first one is always how you question people. So you know what the question, that question, you have an intuitive hit that, hey, if I ask this question, it's really going to change something in this call. It's going to change the trajectory of the call. It's going to change the client's experience. You can feel it, but you ask a different question. Maybe you say, well, it wasn't time yet, or maybe you just ask a safer version of the same question, or maybe you follow it up with a joke, or maybe just you do something, right? So how you question will show your identity. So if you're asking questions that feel a little bit on the safer side, they're not rocking the boat too hard. And you say like, oh, it's about reading the room, right? Oh, well, the client wasn't ready for that, or we don't have the relationship or the rapport. If you're being really honest, if you're doing this consistently, it's because somewhere in your identity, you haven't fully claimed the belief that you're the coach who can hold that space, that you're the coach that they hired, or that, yeah, you're the coach that they hired to be able to create that space. You don't believe that fully, right? Your identity doesn't quite match that. So you're not going to go there. So if you recognize this within yourself, keep that in mind. So another area is how you challenge, right? So how you question was the first one. How you challenge is the second one. Because how you challenge is everything too, because your client gives you that comfortable answer, right? The one that sounds good, the one that they actually think is true. They're not lying to you. They oftentimes they really think that's true. That's the truth they're operating out of. The one that keeps things moving without actually shifting anything, the one that feels, again, there's a level of safety within it. Maybe you just let it go. Maybe you move on. You nod, yes, of course. You validate, right? You normalize. Maybe you add a quick reframe because it feels a little bit more productive, but you didn't challenge it. You didn't name what you actually noticed with the client. You didn't push back, right? You didn't make yourself uncomfortable. And when we talk about challenge, it's not about being aggressive or confrontational. That's not the work that we do. It's not about that. It's about whether you trust yourself enough to say, I'm not sure if I believe what you're trying to tell me. Or that answer feels like you're protecting something. Or is that really true? Or we've been here before. You told me this last week. You told me this 3 weeks ago that you were going to change this behavior. And here we are doing the exact same thing the exact same way. What's going on with this? Right? Your clients are not paying you to be their friend. They're not paying you to validate them. That is one of the stickiest things for me is a coach that over validates. Because if you keep over validating, you keep confirming their patterns. So if you're not challenging them, it's something that you have to work on for yourself, right? That's where your identity doesn't meet that of a coach who can challenge, who can hold that space, right? One who can hold the moment and doesn't flinch. It's not about being more confident. It's about having the belief that you're capable of doing that. Do you guys hear the difference? There's a difference within that. It's about who you are and what you think you're capable of holding. Really important for you to recognize. Then number 3 are opportunities that you're saying no to. All right, so this is outside of your coaching session. This is still about identity though. This is about, the speaking gig. This is about what you put your hat in the or what you put your hat in the ring for. This is about different like collabs that you have, different partnerships, different people that you're putting yourself in rooms with. Right? This is about who you think that you can invite onto your podcast or who you think that you could go onto their podcast, right? You say you're not ready, that you need to have more stuff, that you need your back end to look better, like whatever that is. And maybe technically there are some logistics that you need to figure out, which is 100% valid, but it shouldn't be the thing that stops you. And if you're honest with yourself, is it the logistics or is it that you can't picture yourself as the person who does that or that someone that's capable of that? Right? Identity will decide what you apply for. Identity will decide what clients you attract. It will decide what you click away from. It will be the opportunities that you never pursue. That is absolutely your data of what you believe about yourself. That's your identity ceiling right there. Right? So you can do some work around that. Where are you afraid to step into that? Right? And then this last one I want to talk about today is your visibility. Right? Because if you can look at how visible you're being or how visible you're not being, right? Then this is going to show you a lot about your identity as well. Right? So you go quiet, you post less, you disappear for 2 weeks, you tell yourself you've been busy. Again, logistics are true there, right? Maybe you have been busy. I know for me that whenever I would just completely ghost like my social media after I would have some momentum, if I was being really honest with myself, there was a reason. Yes, I got busy, but I got busy because I was prioritizing other things and it was uncomfortable to keep posting in the same way and not getting the traction that I wanted. And that's exhausting. It's exhausting to keep showing up a certain way. And so I'd pull myself back. Well, maybe I'm meant to be over here and not here. Or maybe it's not meant to be this or not that. Right? So visibility is a big thing. And if you really are honest with yourself, like I ask you guys to do all the time, you're going to see what you need to see. And for me, I was pulling back a lot because there was a part of me that didn't want to have to keep putting in that work and that exhaustion and maybe not get to that point that I wanted to get to. Right. And so that visibility I would pull back from, right? Because there was a version of me that's like, can I actually hold that next level? Can I actually do that thing? Because I'm tired now. Right. So there was an identity problem. Right. So visibility problems are almost always identity problems in disguise as a visibility problem. Right. So you don't, This is where it gets a little like, I would say almost convoluted a little bit because you don't necessarily need to earn another credential or get more testimonials about how great you're doing before you really show up, right? You need to start showing up and then also get those things. You need to be doing it in parallel. Hopefully that makes sense because we're not here to undercut credentials because you need them. I told you that at the top of the hour. You need credentials. You need credentials and you need to earn trust because you're going to earn that trust by having the skill, right? Because anyone can go out and use an AI to solve a lot of their problems right now. So what makes you as a coach stand out? You have to ask yourself that question. And how can you confidently lean into it? How can you confidently step into it? Right? So as we look at these different things, which one is you? Which one stands out for you? Is it the visibility? Is it the opportunities you say no to? Is that your area for growth? Is it how you challenge? Is it how you question? Where is your area for growth? Where do you know that your identity needs to level up and that you need to match it and that you need to actually grow into that level of identity? It's a really big piece. So as you can tell, what we've talked about actually, it goes way beyond just your business, right? It's not just about how you're showing up as a coach, right? This goes beyond that. Your clients are going to come to you with these same patterns, right? Every single day. The client who says something like, oh, I just need to be more disciplined. Oh, I just need to have a better routine. I need a better system. I just need to have more confidence. If you aren't answering these questions for yourself, don't you think it's going to be really hard for you to answer these questions for your clients too and facilitate that change? Right? If you don't know how to look underneath that surface answer, if you're still taking and presenting the complaint at face value, then you're going to spend 8 sessions helping them build a system for a problem that was not a system problem, right? It was built on a faulty identity. So this is foundational to how I work with my coaches, how I train my coaches, because you can't interrupt a pattern you haven't accurately identified. And if you name it wrong, if you see it wrong, if you believe it wrong, like if you have the belief that it is a system problem, then you work on the wrong thing, right? And your client will work really hard and they're going to feel something shifting and then they're going to slide right back. They're going to have the insight and they're going to slide right back because you haven't addressed that symptom. You haven't addressed the real structural root of what's going on, right? You cannot find this pattern in your clients if you can't see it for yourself. I'd say that's why I'm so good at myself because I can see my own patterns. I don't always immediately fix them or address them. I can see them real quick though. And then I am honest enough with myself to move through them, to make the changes that I know need to be made, right? So then I can spot those patterns really quickly in others. So you need to be doing this work on yourself, right? Which is why all of these are going to come down to you in one way or another. So if you've never asked yourself that question of what do I actually believe about my worth? If you've never sat with the real question and answered that, like, what do I actually believe about who I am? That really direct question. It's not going to come back down to a competency issue, right? It's going to come back down to the depth that you're willing to go with yourself. So I'm also not saying that you have to be like absolutely fully healed and have no triggers or have nothing else that you need to work on as a coach, because that's not going to be true either, right? That's not the standard, right? The standard is not just awareness. The standard is, have you done this work? Are you still looking? Are you still looking to improve? Are you still looking to increase your or level up your identity? Because if you have, you know what that feels like and you know what you're looking for and you can recognize it with confidence in your clients. So this all comes together there. So I want you guys to ask yourself the question of, as we start to wrap up here, what do you actually believe about what you're capable of? And when you look at that and when you get to that level of that discomfort in the identity piece, that's where you're going to know where you need to focus. That right there, that's your up level moment. That's where you can grow. And that's how you can start to, and you can use your client sessions, you can use your conversations, you can use all of that as a mirror to be able to answer these questions. Okay. It's going to come down to skills. It's going to come down to more training. It's going to come down to beliefs. It's going to be coming down to shifting that, using the trigger response method. If you're not familiar with that, shoot me a DM and I'll send you some details on that for sure. So, because what you believe about yourself is what you're willing to do. It's going to allow what you actually allow yourself to do in a situation. Right. So that's all I have for today. If this really lands with you, share this. This will be up on YouTube very shortly. So you can share this with somebody else, invite them to our Wednesday calls. It's free for everybody. If you want to learn how to actually do this work for yourself in a very structured way and also facilitate it with clients and use the trigger response method, just let me know. Applications are open, but we can jump on a call to see if Coaching Mastery Academy is the right fit for you to continue this work together. And if that doesn't feel like it's aligned for you right now, that's totally fine too. Just keep showing up every single Wednesday at noon Central Time. Um, I'm really excited about what we're working on for next week. Next week, we're going to get a little more structural with like the way that actually we're going to do more skill next week. So the last couple of weeks, we've really talked about more of like the inner work, the identity. We'll obviously continue that because I can't have a conversation without talking about it. But next week, we're really going to start to talk about the skill that's required and what to do when clients get into really sticky situations or how they show up or if they're resistant to you or the call itself. So we have a little bit of time, and like I always say, if we don't have any questions, we'll wrap up early. But if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand. All right, guys, we don't have any questions for today. So I hope to see all of you next week on the Coaching Edge Live.